So sometimes there's nicknames connected to Pappas, or like Papa Pappas and weird things like that. But
What is Papa Papas?
Papa Pappas, so that's just like Papa Smurf, like the father of
Ah.
food. Um, I want to. There's a few nicknames I'm working on anyway. Uh, Dude, it's good to have you, and it's good to talk about Zcoin. As a lot of people know, I only like proof of work, fixed supply projects. So that makes my life easy when I get to talk to those kind of people. So
Really? You're against those with like a tail emission?
yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, I have nothing against that, but it's just an interesting viewpoint because obviously, as time goes by, that tail emission maybe just replaces coins that I lost or which happened. So that's why I kind of see it like, yeah, it's technically unlimited, but practically limited. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah.
but don't. I mean, ultimately, with so many decimals, I mean, we have to be having some use cases for money that make, like, if I'm correct, it's also 21 million for Zcoin.
Yeah, 21.4 because we suffered an early hack and we had to reflect that supply. We can talk about that later.
Right on. So
Yeah.
21.4, right?
Mhm.
And I guess we're going to 8 decimal places as well.
Yeah, yeah, around this, basically the same like Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the market cap would have to go to what to make, that significant down to the decimal point of 8, right? It would have to be
Hmm.
like magnitudes above any money market, or any market cap we look at today, if we're gold or whatever.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that a lot of people say like, I mean I understand where you're coming from. Like some people say, oh, when it goes to zero, like in 2100 something, then miners will not mine it. But I feel that if after like that amount of time you have not taken off as a platform, you probably should be dead anyway. Because I mean the idea was to like create the fees and have that sustain itself. But when you're looking that far into the future, and yeah, maybe it doesn't seem possible now. I mean, I never thought I would see Bitcoin at 10,000, right? And, then, like now it's the new norm, and and that's why I guess like when people talk about this, I don't think genuinely anyone knows. Maybe even economists might have a better idea, but yeah, I mean, I'm open to both models, but I don't see why to be like so like yeah, this is the only way or that's the other way. But yeah, it's an interesting point.
I agree with that mentality. It's good to keep an open mind. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's like, hey, so gold kind of is, scarce, but
Until you can start mining comets and what, meteors or whatever that is.
I love
Asteroids,
that.
yeah, correct.
I love that we started bringing asteroid mining into like the conversation about gold scarcity. It's only something that happened. Like, no one used to talk about this until crypto, right? Did
Yeah.
we used to talk about how gold's going to be impacted by asteroids? So one of the things you mentioned about the tail emissions is, eventually people are going to be relying on fees.
Mhm.
For Bitcoin, one of the things I discussed on my last episode with Donald, we were talking about Luke Dash Jr.'s proposal for 300 kilobyte block size. Um, that
Yeah.
would definitely help maintain fees,
It's not a problem that needs to be solved now. The problem right now is that like you make it that small, you're just going to kill adoption, right? When things become so difficult to move. I mean, we people think that Bitcoin's a success now. Oh yeah, maybe, like that's only relative, but it's still really small and you want to kind of like cap its growth right now. It should be, I don't know, I got into Bitcoin because I was interested in, I mean, hate Roger Ver or hate Bitcoin Cash. I think they do have a point that when Bitcoin was first marketed, it was meant to be like cash, borderless P2P decentralized cash. And it's only because of the whole block size debate this whole store of value thing came about. And I find it very strange that in this world nowadays everything is about binary. It's a store of value. It's money. Why can't it be both? Like fuck it, right? Like I don't understand why everyone has to like take such clear sides, because real life it's not binary. Real life is always about nuances, always about it's the truth is somewhere in between, and it can't be both. I don't see why they're mutually exclusive. If you could never convert you could never convert gold to cash or things like that, or like it has no utility. I mean, sure, gold's price is not a reflection of its utility, but it has to have some utility for it to be priced. Like it cannot have zero
What's a
utility.
happy medium that if the choices aren't binary, you're not going to have forks, right? Like,
Yeah. And I
what,
mean,
what,
like the whole Bitcoin, like the best way to kill Bitcoin Cash was to just have increased the block size, like, and that would have like totally kind of nullified whatever, things that Bitcoin Cash would try to say about big blocks and things like that. I mean, I'm not talking about like crazy 128 or 1 terabyte blocks, but the point is that the whole argument of like really cheap transfers and things like that, if it's solved by a 4 megabyte block, why not? It's
yeah.
the infrastructure can definitely take it. Miners obviously can take it. It's only when you go up to like sizes past 32 megabytes you start getting into some problems. And
Well,
if I can increase Bitcoin's adoption by 8 times, I mean, let's say like the capacity, isn't that a great thing? Why are we thinking like of a potential problem? You can't foresee the future, and the problem is actually right now. Like I mean, now of course with the semi bear bull market, it isn't so bad. But I mean, if anyone went through the 2016 to 2017, it was ridiculous. And I remember seeing there were people selling their what we call nasi lemak, in our place, like the local food. They say, oh, we accept Bitcoin now. Like, wait a minute, the fee is going to be higher
and the cost, yeah.
than the cost of the meal. It doesn't make sense. And I find it really unfortunate, like, it's been kind of like the narrative has been kind of hijacked, and there's nothing wrong with it being cheap to transfer. It should be, because that's what increases its utility.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I like whether lightning solves everything. Everything is like so like, oh, lightning is the end all solution, and why can't you do both? This binary thing again. Block size is evil, lightning is evil. You can easily have both. And even the lightning authors themselves, if you listen to their podcast and listen to what they're saying, they are saying that lightning isn't the end all solution. It wasn't actually designed to be like this all encompassing layer 2 solution. It was something to take certain types of capacity off. And yes, it does that, but is it like the ultimate layer 2 solutions? It's really way too early to tell
So
whether
how do
that's
you
the
have both
case.
small blocks and big blocks on one chain?
No, no, not small blocks and big blocks. But what I'm saying is that yeah, you can increase the block size incrementally. Even something that Ender Back has actually said publicly in his Twitter before, that he think like a slow, steady increase of block size maybe it's desirable. And the idea that you can have Lightning and you can have slightly larger block
Larger block.
sizes coexist, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I mean, I know there was this narrative to say that we should not increase block size to help Lightning adoption. I don't think it's done that.
Yeah.
Like yeah. So I
Well,
feel that
I,
it's not
I'm
pragmatic.
curious
Yeah.
about because one of the things that I agree on is that it's not great to be absolute.
Yeah.
At the same time, you need to make decisions, right? So,
Correct.
is there a way where both can coexist, both mindsets, the loop dash and the big block, or is the only way to resolve those differences forking?
I do think that it was actually possible to do it, but what happened was, I mean, like we were seeing that this happened to democracies, right? Like issues become boiled down to, they become simplified so much that people just pick one or two camps, and honestly, you need to actually kind of make it such that you are, when you talk about, when you have a like an honest discussion, you talk about both the pros and cons, and not just like I don't know, if you see like Zcoin's privacy like comparisons, we never say we're the best privacy coin. We say that we have a very good set of trade-offs, and that's not sexy. I mean, like, everyone's like, we're the best privacy coin, we have the best tech, but it's always about trade-offs, and that's the real world. Like, yeah, you can have, let's say, like, like Zcash, they have like ZK snarks, and something that's really anonymous, Z to Z transactions, and arguably, I mean, even Monero guys would argue that the Z to Z transaction is the most anonymous type of blockchain, like, cryptocurrency payment that you can do right now. No one is disputing this, but there are trade-offs, like trusted setup, about using experimental cryptography, about losing auditable supply, and these are things that other privacy coins have. Like, you can solve them to different degrees. Like Zcoin, we use similar like zero knowledge proofs, but we don't use ZK snarks. We don't have trusted setup. We use standard cryptographic assumptions like ECC curves, which is used in like Monero and almost all of our cryptography, right? So it's very unlikely for, let's say, like ECC cryptography to break. While ZK snarks, they're using like like the KA1 assumption. They're using things like curve pairings, which are a lot more experimental. And I think the main criticism is that Zcash construction, its whole construction is really, really complex, which means that more shit can fuck up. So I mean, this is like, people have the kind of like, similar to block size debate. I mean, and bringing that back, it's not like a binary thing. And if people truly understand the trade-offs, and like posts should be weighing both sides carefully, not hiring PR teams to shit on each other. And it's unfortunate that our world is such that I would hate to say it, the intellectual level, it's, people just get hyped up about, like, getting behind a platform, getting behind an idea without, and ignoring all sorts of criticism. And I do think that if people examine themselves and just say, hey, look, take a look at the pros and cons, maybe we can find a compromise, then yeah, we don't need to constantly fork and make all this like, I mean, yeah, sure, forking is a way to get consensus and see the fittest of survivor, but it's not the only way. Yeah.
So what would have been a good compromise in this, right now, where there's a belief that, hey, let's go up a bit in block size, where on the other side there is a belief to go down in block size, because look, I understand the argument of node counts are down for Bitcoin. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's a fact, right? And it's likely that the larger the blockchain, the higher the requirements to operate a node. And I am aware that there's a different node set up for things like Zcoin, where there's some sort of incentive to operate.
Right.
Versus the altruistic, primarily altruistic. Personally, other people argue that as a business, you want to have your own node, but
Yeah, we understand. Yeah.
so, what's the trade-off there? How do you have a compromise on this desire to make it a lower hardware requirement, and at the same time satisfy this need to have a larger block size?
So there's quite a lot of interesting research that's happening, like things with dealing with RSA accumulators, something like Utrixo, which, or like even stuff like Mimblewimble. I mean, not totally, but these are things that maybe like Mimblewimble is too far of a departure from Bitcoin, but things like UTXO accumulators and stuff like that, which I think the like one of the co-founders of the Lightning paper is currently exploring. So the thing is that solutions are being come up with today. They are being worked on. While this is happening, and we have to believe that eventually these solutions will become to maturity, you have to cope with current demand. So if you see the current demand, increase it to a place where, okay, 4 megabytes or so, and you can take current demand. And sure, there's this small minority of people that say, let's reduce the block size, but I think that's a very, very small minority. Like even you take a Luke Dash Jr.'s post, not really many people were behind it. I think in general, people thought like, that's why it's not really being considered seriously now. Yeah, sure, it's fair to discuss it,
Well, it's
to
very
talk
forward
about.
thinking. I think it's
Yeah,
extremely forward thinking.
too forward thinking maybe, and it's kind of like solving. It doesn't really. It's actually creating a problem to solve a problem that doesn't exist yet. Like that's how I feel about it. Like I mean, people who use the Lightning Network says that when it works great, but when it doesn't, and
It
that's
sounds
not the
like
kind of.
what you're
Yeah,
proposing is that, specifically for Bitcoin, because I think that's
yeah.
what we're primarily talking about, is that there
Mm.
needs to be a more rapid decision-making progress to adapt for where we are today. Because a lot of the arguments around like block size, for example, right? That's a short-term issue in
Yeah,
that we don't have these better solutions that we're coming up with, right? Constantly,
yeah.
there's new protocols, new ideas. So the idea is like, look, if we can rapidly adjust based on where we are today,
Mm-hmm.
it makes sense to go up to big blocks or larger ones. And
Mm-hmm.
then, hey, when we get to the bandwidth problem and centralized nodes, then we go to smaller blocks. Let's react when we have the problem rather than trying to think of every single like. Am I?
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Is that an accurate?
I think like a good analogy is like I have like, let's say if I have a kid, like a 3-year-old kid, I go and buy him an adult size shoe. Yeah, it will work for him in the long run, but he'll be suffering through the whole of his growing life, right? And that's what small block size are. Like, yeah, you may be solving a problem in the future, but you're gonna suffer through this entire period, and he probably ends up not using the fucking shoe because it
Yeah,
just doesn't
it's
fit,
it's interesting, because the more changes you make to a protocol as well, you change the certainty of its immutability.
Yeah,
Um,
but
so
the block size isn't doesn't do that. It
right,
doesn't change. It's a very small incremental increase. I mean, like I know, like I get a lot of hate of this, and people are like, oh, he's a big blocker. I'm neither. I wouldn't call myself a big blocker. I wouldn't call myself. I'm just realistic about both solutions aren't perfect right now. And people should just stop talking about, oh, let's deal with 1 terabyte blocks, and just going to the extra, oh, like everything should be on lightning, and that's just how. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I nuance and like uncertainty, are my bread and butter, right?
that's
Yeah.
where the fun is. That's where the fun is. So, one of the things that I've always liked about Zcoin is you guys are early adopters on new protocols, new technologies.
Yep.
When Dandelion first came out, the first to adopt it was Zcoin.
Hmm.
Do you think that that's a trend that's going to continue, where you'll be the early adopters for a protocol? Is there one coming up?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say like we haven't reached like a point of ossification, or let's like stagnate development, right? Like we haven't reached that kind of critical mass. I mean, we're relatively low cap, in the 80s on CMC or CoinGecko. And I mean, that's not great, but at the same time it gives us more freedom to rapidly deploy new technologies in, I guess, less risks, right? And we have suffered like problems before when I kind of like, I would say that when Zcoin first started, honestly, we kind of made a mistake. I think I would say in the first 2 years we made a lot of mistakes, in the sense that we were too rapid in developing and deploying new technologies, not allowing them to mature and then deploying them on mainnet, because we wanted to be seen as leading the charge. When if you're dealing with people's money, you know, you have to be careful. and 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 I would say that yes, we would still be, trying to push the envelope of like privacy technology and things like that. Like for example, we just in July we recently deployed Sigma, which is a replacement to Zerocoin, which allows all these beautiful things like no trusted setup, standard cryptographic assumptions, and pretty small proof sizes, like only 1.5 kilobytes versus like 25 kilobytes on Zerocoin, and that's a really important first step. And we actually came out with a new academic paper called Lelantus, which is our next gen privacy protocol, which actually extends the functionality of Sigma by removing the need for fixed denominations and allowing direct anonymous transfers. So I guess for the viewers who don't know how Zero Coin or Sigma works, a coin is taken, you destroy it, and at any time in the future you can redeem it for a brand new coin with no previous transaction history. It is the links and the payment links between addresses that actually compromise your anonymity. And I think this is an interesting trade-off because, like things like Nero, things like Dash or like a CoinJoin or Wasabi Wallet, they are basically sort of like mixing in a crowd, right? And it's kind of like there's some like criticism to say whether is this going to be sustainable for the long term. Is this privacy going to hold in the next 2 or 3 years, especially in the era of like advanced blockchain analysis or AI assisted blockchain analysis, and we are starting to see attacks on even like Monero, like Flood XMR, that shows the kind of weakness of decoy models. And Wimber is the same. It's still kind of hiding in the crowd. You don't really break the transaction links, while stuff like Zcoin and Zcash, it totally breaks because of the burn and redeem or like using zero knowledge proofs, right? And I guess it's a so we feel that we're like kind of pushing the envelope with privacy technology while not using experimental cryptography, while still using standard cryptographic assumptions and not requiring some sort of trust. Like for example, like trusted setup is a huge problem in Zcash. I mean, the whole purpose of blockchain has been, don't trust, verify. But here you kind of have to trust. So I do think it's that I would say that we will be continuing to push the envelope, but maybe sort of slow down the development cycles, not like release a new privacy protocol like every year or something like that. We
Well,
have
you're a
to
lot
let
larger than you used to. I mean, even being in the top hundreds is significant as size. Also, your hash rate is pretty,
yeah, it's
fucking high.
decent.
Yeah,
Mm.
so it's definitely higher up than the top. Like in the POW coins, you're up there.
Mm.
So you touched on a lot of things. One of the things I wanted to ask is, what's your view on in the future? Will there be some sort of tax or premium you pay on using a privacy coin versus one that's, transparent?
And what do you mean by that? Like, how would you like quote an example of like a tax on privacy coins?
So I think that would there be a premium on certain marketplaces might be more open to accept that coin versus another one. So would there be a premium on a product to purchase it using a privacy coin?
I personally don't think so. I think it's more of like people don't care as long as they can convert it, and I think like they're not going to get into trouble with regulation. I think right now this is a battle, and it's not an easy battle because you want to be compliant, but at the same time, you don't want to erode your privacy guarantees. And that's been really tough. And sometimes when governments are not reasonable, it just polarizes the issue. Like for example, I would quote an example like Japan, they ban or soft ban privacy coins. You don't see any privacy coins being traded on any of the Japanese exchanges. And the reason they did that was like, oh, because of the coin track hack and all this thing, which involved NEM, which is not a privacy coin. And there were no privacy coins involved in this entire hack. There's
It was an
nothing.
excuse. It was excuse.
It was no, it was like it was a scapegoat, right? They're like,
Right.
let's find something to blame and evil privacy coins that didn't do anything to this hack, but they're damn evil. So let's ban it to show that we're doing something,
So,
and that's
do you
horrible.
think is there going to be any transactional coin that doesn't have privacy elements?
I would say that, like for example, like Bitcoin, it'll be very hard to integrate privacy technology that is meaningful.
Right,
Partly because it's not meant to change drastically, and it always comes with certain risks. Like for example, you lose supply auditability in certain cases, which is horrible for Bitcoin. Like with Bitcoin, there was like two incidents where they could have a massive inflation attack. Like there was a value overflow incident when how many trillion coins were created, and they could fix it because they could see the supply, right?
right.
But and the second one, which was I think 2018, there was like a bug that could have resulted in some inflation. But even if it did happen, you could
They would
still
see it.
tell that something went wrong. But how about stuff like Zcash, or even stuff like Zcoin? I mean, we have different levels of auditability, or things like even like Monero. Like um, if the cryptography breaks, or there's an issue in the implementation, coins can be inflated. Like you could have like a trillion coins suddenly, and you don't really know. I think that's. Uh, I mean, I would say that if like a major coin like Bitcoin could have really good privacy, then all privacy coins would just die because there's
Of
just no
course.
reason for that.
But but is there going to be a transactional coin that doesn't have privacy elements? Because one could argue that Bitcoin might not be a daily trend. I'm not going to buy
Yeah.
my.
Okay. But how would you like? I don't see any transactional coin going that direction. I mean, I would consider Zcoin as a transactional coin.
Right, one hundred
Yeah,
percent.
yeah.
Is
So
there
I
is there a non-privacy transactional coin in the future?
I don't know, Bitcoin Cash or Litecoin. If they don't go ahead with their confidential transactions. Oh, I got blocked from Charlie Lee just a few days ago for calling him out on his bullshit.
Oh, what you say?
uh, no, because so I remember when he was first talking about confidential transactions in Litecoin, and this was 1 or 2 years ago. He was talking about it a few years, and I was like, that sounds horrible. First of all, it doesn't do really much for privacy. So confidential transactions, all it does is it hides values. That's
Right.
all. I mean, the links are still there. You can still see A transacting to B. You just don't really know how much it is, and that's kind of poor privacy. Like I think Ian Mears from Zcash actually said something like, "Yeah, I know you're paying for hand surgery, but I just like hand enlargement surgery. I just don't know
How much you
how
paid?
much you're paying for it." And that's not really, I wouldn't call that true privacy, right? And so first of all, I was like, okay, fine, I was like confidential transactions on Litecoin, and then next thing, when people say, well, that's not really privacy, say, oh, well, why don't I combine it with CoinJoin? Well, okay, CoinJoin doesn't really like, it's a stopgap solution. It doesn't really provide good privacy either, and it just shows that he didn't really do his research, right? He felt like confidential transactions. So I actually said like, well, the first call out was like, look, that doesn't really offer privacy. And then I think sometime early last year he was talking about, oh, I'm going to look at Mimblewimble through extension blocks, and this will be done by the end of 2019, and everyone got excited and the price pumped, right? And then say, well, we're going to work with Beam, who is going to help us implement this. And I was like, really? I think that's bullshit, because first of all, why would Beam want to basically kill themselves? Like
Right.
if Litecoin has like really good privacy, then why do I want to use privacy coins, right? And secondly, I was like, this guy has been talking about this confidential transaction, and suddenly he has, because Mimblewimble was a hot thing then, and then he was talking about it. And just recently, like, there was that whole expose that there was no Litecoin development, there was
Right.
nothing. And and I actually reached out to the Beam guys and said, what happened to that so-called partnership, right? Like and I think Guy Corem actually posted there was like some initial discussions, and then Litecoin never got back. So I don't know. That's not the sign of somebody that's serious about implementing a privacy thing. It just seems like someone that's intent on pumping the price. So I just called him out. I'm like, yeah, you guys were not serious, about your development. You guys, did not intend seriously to implement privacy features, and actually what triggered it, because he was answering to the FUD. Oh, well, it's kind of true that there was no Litecoin development in the Litecoin chat, right? And someone was asking him, well, if you're looking at privacy, have you taken a look at Zcoin's Lelantus protocol? And then he did like say, I don't care about XYZ coin with their whatever Bula Boa protocol. And I was like, okay, that kind of is like that's pretty
Well, there's
rich
no
for
reason for
some.
that dismissive attitude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why I actually tweeted, and I was like, hey, for someone who doesn't get privacy, who doesn't really wasn't serious about implementing it, how can you be dismissive of actual privacy technologies which are being taken seriously? Like Lelantus is a candidate for Monero's one of the three candidates for Monero in increasing their ring sizes to sizes of 1,000 or more, and right now like their ring sizes is 11. So it's not as if it's just some flash in the pan thing that we created, right? It's actually is being taken seriously, and to just like make a dismissive remark like that, I said, for someone that says that they're about privacy, doesn't understand much about privacy protocols, and lied basically about implementing it, you don't really have any right to talk about us in such a disparaging manner, right? And then he just blocked me. So yeah.
So on the blocks, because I think Twitter blocking is an interesting topic.
Yeah.
You got blocked there because you obviously didn't agree with his worldview, or you were making him look bad.
Yeah. Oh, I hit him
Um,
where it hurt because he
you,
knows true.
you, so does it bother you that you got blocked?
No, I actually find it quite entertaining. Like I'm like, okay, you can't deal with the truth and you
Right, but
block
now you
me.
can't interact. Um, you won't be able to see things he's posting now. I'm not saying that like, hey, if you could go back in history and change it,
Mm.
but if you had a way to continue the conversation with Charlie, would you prefer you guys continue to be able to debate, or are you say, you know what, it's a good thing that I can't see any more of your viewpoint.
I
So
mean,
to put things in perspective,
hmm
I've been active for a while now. I asked a block stream question to Jimmy Song. Now
hmm
I'm more or less, I'm not a maximalist. I like to call myself altcoin agnostic.
okay, all right.
I know there's something great out there. I just don't know what it is.
Okay,
It's like
I'll call it agnostic. I like that.
it's a safe way of being, an atheist. Anyway, um, and I brought, I had this question for Jimmy Song. Blocked me. I didn't troll. I didn't say anything. I literally was asking a question because I didn't understand. If anybody wanted to look at me from an outside view, I'm clearly in a certain camp.
Yeah.
And now for all time, eternal, there's only two people that have ever blocked me, him and Craig Wright. So from
Yeah,
my,
Craig Wright blocked me for I don't know whatever reason. I didn't say
and
anything,
that
and
was fast,
he
right?
just blocked me. Yeah.
But now, from my perspective, from my Twitterverse, there's only two people who look identical, and that's Jimmy Song and Craig Wright. Now, I think that liberally blocking people is a mistake, because you change your ability to learn from them, you change your ability to educate them. Um, I mean, do you liberally block?
I would say that, I mean, there are people that I don't like, but I still follow, or like even they say like really harsh things. But I feel that if it's constructive, then I'll continue to listen. Or even if like I don't agree on their viewpoint, but if he raises something like, yeah, maybe he has a point. I think I'm quite frank about myself. To realize that when I'm wrong about something, or this is a viewpoint I haven't seen and it may hurt. right? Like there's so many things you can shit on Zcoin. I mean, like that's like it's easy, right? And I think that uh, if I feel that one of my strengths is that I'm able to accept this criticism, evaluate it, and not necessarily accept it, but take it into a part of my viewpoint. But there are some people where I would say they just suck the energy out, and they're just like negative with no type of um like
Value
benefit
add.
whatsoever. So
Yeah.
like for example, like the guy I blocked, like for example, when we kept on releasing news updates, like all right, we released Sigma, yes, we released like new GUI, we got like 5 million merchants in Thailand to be able to accept Zcoin, and like we did the elections and all these amazing things that we've done. But he just can say like like, oh, but it doesn't stop this shitcoin from dumping. It doesn't stop this shitcoin from dumping. And every single time he'll post that. So those type of people, I have no qualms with blocking. That doesn't enrich my worldview in any way.
Yeah. No, at
So
that point,
yeah,
it's trolling. You're making everyone's experience negative.
yeah,
Because it's obvious when the narrative is just toxic. So I guess repetition is one of the criteria
yes,
to block someone based on that, like that you're seeing the exact same behavior multiple times. I'm not proposing that people should even warn people about blocking, right?
no,
It's like it's very obvious though that that kind of behavior deserves it because one, it's not adding any value, and two, it starts threatening. It's a social attack, for example, right? I mean,
yeah. Like I take a look at our Zcoin chat, like our Telegram community. There are some people that I find very hard to to accept. But sometimes when they're voicing their concerns, I'm actually like, I don't agree, and I find it really annoying. But at the same time, I'm like, they're voicing the concerns because they give a shit,
right,
and therefore, I, even as I don't agree with them, it's not the reason to block them or ban them or stuff. Like there's this guy that keeps on talking about proof of work is flawed, proof of stake, and all this, like really like pro proof of stake, and keeps on talking about the same thing over and over again. But I see value in that, and I like maybe not the repetition, but he does bring up good points, some points which I obviously already know. But I think it's also important to let him voice his opinion so that other community members can also chime in. Like I may not agree with him, but if enough community members say no, this is something that we should look in seriously, and this is how I feel about it, then we shouldn't just stifle off that discussion.
yep.
As long
You
as it's
create an
done in the
echo chamber.
constructive manner. Yeah, yeah. We
The echo
to,
chamber.
we,
People
we,
see
we
that
don't
you
want to build that echo chamber. That's right.
and you're setting a precedent. People will see that you kick that person.
Mm.
It's not like you're doing it in a vacuum. No, so I applaud the fact that you're very open about it. I've been blessed with being able to talk easy talks. These are easy talks. Somebody's very open and says, "Hey, it's easy to shit on my coin. We've got things to fix. There are trade-offs." I find myself in a weird place interviewing people who are absolute. That they've figured it
They're
out.
fun though. Absolute people are fun, and that's what grabs the headlines. It's like for example, people like every time people interview me and like, what's Bitcoin price going to be in like next year, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe up, maybe down. Like they don't want to hear that. They want to hear
No, they want you to say
Bitcoin to
100K.
1 million or 100K, and I'm like, okay, it's like it's very hard for me to do that, and that's what grabs headlines. And I think this is a bigger systemic problem with the world because like everyone's like attracted to, and we're seeing this with world leaders as well. People who boil down complex issues into very simple forms so that people can get it, and ignoring the nuance. And I mean, this is a sad state. Not just a problem in blockchain, a problem with our world, and
It's an
like
attention
things like
span thing. It's an attention
yeah.
span thing. Like, like for me, it's people when I find people that I love talking to, and like we've gone over the time that I usually set, right? I always say 15 to 30 minutes, and it's horrible. You're horrible. You're killing me. And
I'm
it's the
sorry.
attention span. No, I mean, I'm loving this, right? And the only reason I have to think about stuff like that is because people look at the time to consume your information. I'm like, wow, that's going to be 40 minutes. Who are you, Joe Rogan? Like
Yeah. I'm like, who's this weird Chinese dude? Yeah.
yeah, and this guy is Crypto Grownups channel. Like, what do I care? So, I understand like why they do it, and the only thing we can do is be more succinct as possible. At the same time, don't sacrifice quality. It's a balance. It's a balance. But Reuben, you've been on point, man. Like we talked about a lot. I love the conversation about the big blocks that we had as well. I think that
Didn't get to shield my coin, but it's okay.
no, you know what? I think you did great for Zcoin as well. And Lelantus is a big deal. The anonymity set is massively bigger than what Monero has at the moment. So, I think that, we're definitely going to put that in the title that we discussed that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having you again, hopefully.
Yes, yeah, I really enjoyed this talk. I mean, like, I know it went a bit rambly, but it's because I feel strongly about it.
No, it was awesome, and I like that you also mentioned your Telegram community. I'm sure everybody in your community knows who that one POS guy is.
Yeah, definitely. What's
the one POS guy's name? What's the POS guy's name?
I'm not gonna call him out, but everyone's gonna know.
Like, no advertising for you. Awesome. Well, okay, we'll do this again. I'll post this soon. And yeah, thanks, dude.
Thanks so much, Dean. Yeah.